next part of our program. And remember, we'll have a chance to meet the students and have questions in the breakout sessions a little later. So thanks for your attention. Okay. Ziv, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my presentation. Hope you all can see that. All right. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here and talk to you about why I personally think that MD-PhD, or being a clinician scientist, is one of the most interesting, challenging, fun, diversified journeys that you can take for your career. Which is why I call this talk a journey of many paths. And I will talk about these paths that you can take. There are many, many different things that you can do with MD-PhD. So I will just get right to it. So there is a lot of research in the literature about different MD-PhD programs and their outcomes, and you can see there all kinds of data about how many of those that have completed their MD-PhDs continue to do research, how much they get funding compared to those that do only clinicians or only PhDs in terms of funding for research and things like that. So these are things that actually I'm not going to talk much about. Maybe I'll mention a point here and a point there. But overall, I want to mainly give you my own perspective, which is not going to be very scientific in the sense that it's a sample of one. It's just me. I'm going to tell you about a little bit about my journey, where I'm now, what I'm doing now, and then talk about MD-PhD in general. And it's one example, but I hope that you can learn from it and have questions, and it will give you some things to think about. Because, as I said, this path is really, really interesting with a lot of ways to go to. So I'm going to do the next couple of slides. I'm going to do something that I really don't enjoy doing, which is to talk about myself. But I do have to. I want to share with you what I've done so far and where I am. Just a general things about me, just so you know. I'm 44 years old, still have 20-something years ahead of me of career, I hope. And so I'm kind of midway career. And I started med school in 2003, also in the MD-PhD program in Tel Aviv University in Israel. This program is a little bit different than what Dr. Eisenberg described to you here, because in Israel, like in Europe and other places, you don't do bachelor degree before med school. It's kind of part of med school. So med school is actually 7 years and not 4 years. So the MD-PhD program is actually 10 years or even 11 for many people. But it's the same for you if you consider the bachelor degree that you need to do before, at least in most cases. So I joined the MD-PhD program back in 2003. So the first 3 years are similar to what you're going to do here, preclinical years, where more basic clinical knowledge. And then I spent 3 years in the lab between 2006 and 2009. Like Dr. Eisenberg said, this is a time where you have to be super focused, lots of energy and dedication, so that you can complete things on time. Most people are doing PhDs, they're doing it for a longer time, and most of them do masters before. So it is challenging, but it is rewarding, and I'm sure many of you can do this. But as you can see, I only received my PhD in 2012, because what happens, and it happens quite often, is then the lab work finished in 2009 and got back to my clinical rotations, but I continued finalizing papers, and I submitted my thesis in 2011 and got the PhD in 2012 and the MD in 2013. And then I moved here to Canada to do a postdoctoral fellowship with Dr. Giulo. It was 3 years focused on research in genetics. I will tell you, I'm not going to talk about my research here, because that's not the main interest, but I will mention a little bit about it later. The postdoc, I think, is a very important period of time for clinician researchers, but it's not mandatory. You don't have to do this. Some clinician scientists get their labs and can do research right after their residencies if they're lucky, but some go to do also a postdoc in research, which I highly recommend because you learn a lot. In my case, I also did some grant writing during this time. So I got my first grant as a postdoc, which gave me a great push to the beginning of my career. And I also got my first consultancy contract. And that's an interesting point because, as I will mention later, this is something that I do quite a lot. By consultancy, I mean consultancy to pharmaceutical companies, which is something that I do quite a lot. And then in 2016, I finished my my postdoctoral fellowship, and I was offered a position here at McGill at the Neuro, and I started my lab. In 2022, then I was appointed as an assistant professor. In 2022, I got tenure and was appointed as associate professor. Since last year, I've been appointed as the director of the clinical research unit, which I will talk to you a little bit about in the next slide. And here we are in 2024. So I want to tell you a little bit about my current role so that you will see how diversified or how many things clinician scientists can do. So this is in my case. I'm the principal investigator of the Neurogenomics and Precision Medicine Lab, so I'm a geneticist, and we're studying genetics of neurological disorders. You have the link here if you're interested to go all about. The lab became quite big. We have 20 lab members, 8 of which are PhD students, 2 postdocs, 1 undergrad, and 9 lab staff. On top of that, since last year, I'm the executive director of the clinical research unit at the Neuro. The clinical research unit is a unit that does all the clinical trials at the Neuro. So it's a unit of about a bit over 40 people. And we have something like 100 trials that are currently ongoing on all adult neurological indications. So it's a unit that manages the trials, run the trials. The patients come in, they receive the experimental treatment. It could be a drug, could be other forms of treatments. And we participate in these large international trials. So these two takes most of my time. I would say probably 80 to 90% of my time, and all the rest of the things are 10 to 20% of my time. So I'm also a member of the Neuro executive team, which is basically the team that is the managerial team of the Neuro. The Montreal Neurological Institute has a director, and there's the Neuro executive team, which are 10 people that help him run it. And I'm by far the youngest there, which is a great honor for me, and it's a great also exposure for me to how, because I personally have managerial ambition. I want to manage larger units in the future, so it gives me great exposure already at a relatively young age. I'm also the director of the Neurodegenerative Disorders Research Group, which is a research group of PIs from the Neuro, all focused on neurodegenerative disorders. I'm a director of a project called GCAN. It's a Canadian project focused on this specific gene. The details doesn't matter, but it's a very large project funded with $15 million from several foundations. At my spare time, I'm a consultant currently for 15 pharmaceutical companies. On 3 of them, I'm on the scientific advisory board. One of them, I'm the chair of the scientific advisory board. This doesn't take actually a lot of my time because we meet maybe once a month for an hour. But it's a very interesting experience that gives me, in my clinical research unit work, I do the clinical trials. And in my consultancy work, I see the other side from the pharma. I'm involved with them, helping them develop the trials, develop treatments, etc. I also have some leadership roles in different consortiums, scientific consortium, for example, the Canadian Consortium for Neurodegeneration in Aging, the International RBD Study Group, and these are consortium related to Parkinson's disease. In all of them, I'm on the executive board, and I help them run their research. And on top of that, I have over 60 collaborators worldwide that I collaborate with regularly in our research. So these are basically what I do. These are all the things that I do. It might sound like a lot, I think it is a lot, but Dr. Eisenberg mentioned life balance, which is for me personally something that is very important. I have 2 young kids. This is the first time this week, for example, that I'm not at home with my kids when they get back home from daycare. So it is possible to do that, to remain sane and do all these very, very interesting things. Now I'm going to stop talking about myself. I'll give some maybe my perspective about things, but I want to talk generally about why I think that everybody who has passion for research, which is the first point of why people should do MD-PhD, people who are going to do MD, should do, because there are many, many reasons. I selected some of them that I want to discuss with you here, but there are many reasons why people should do MD-PhD if they have passion for research. But you have to have this passion. If it's not in you, if when you see a problem, you don't ask yourself, why is that? How can I solve it? If you don't have this passion to learn and to understand how things work, I don't think this is for you. But if you do have this passion, and many people do, I highly recommend it. MD-PhD, it's a thing that, in my opinion, and I will give examples later, makes you a better clinician and a better researcher. You become better in both. It gives you the ability to help more people, and I will explain what I mean by that. There's a huge diversity of roles. There is a lot more sustainability of your career, which is an important thing. I will talk a little bit about burnout, because I think this is also something that is important for people who are going to med school in general. But I think doing MD-PhD and have a diversified career where you do lots of interesting things is really, really important to prevent that. I don't have a single day that is similar to the other day. I don't have routine, for example. I don't have any routine really in my life, which is for me great. Having MD-PhD gives you better chances to get to key positions, to get funding. This is backed by research. Some of it I showed in the first slide. There's a lot of collaborations, a lot of travel. There's some really nice perks in it. And the last point that I will talk about is freedom. Okay, so I want to dive into this a little bit more. So passion for research, as I mentioned, this is something that, from my perspective, is very important. I personally, when I see a patient with a certain clinical presentation that is unique or not, I don't know, I want to know why they have it. I want to understand how the mechanism of the disease works, and I want to do something about it. There are many people that they like to be I'm talking about clinicians, that they like to be clinicians, full-time clinicians, and that's great. I mean, they're very important, that they are the vast majority of people. The clinician scientists are only 2 to 5% of all clinicians in most countries. So that's completely fine. And these are people that are interested in seeing a patient, diagnosing them, giving them the treatment that they can give them, and helping them, improve. So that's great. But if you also have the passion of trying to understand what the disease is, and maybe you can do something even better, then you have that passion for research. That's what I mean. But when I'm talking about passion for research, to try to really understand and to help and to solve all these medical issues that we have. Okay, in terms of better scientists and better clinicians, why do I think that MD-PhDs or clinician scientists are better scientists and also better clinicians? As I mentioned, these clinician scientists are the small minority. But if you look, for example, at Nobel Prize winners, 37% of the Nobel Prize winners in physiology and medicine are clinician scientists. The link is at the bottom if you're interested in reading this report. It's from 10 years ago, so it's been a while, but it hasn't changed much. I didn't do the calculation, but you see it quite constantly. And when they did this report, 70% of the chief scientific officers in the top 10 pharma companies were clinician scientists as well. So people with the understanding of the clinical understanding and understanding of science have better understanding of not only of, it's one thing to diagnose a patient. You see a patient with symptoms and you diagnose them based on their symptoms, based on tests that you do, imaging and things like that. But when you understand the basic mechanisms of disease, when you understand the heterogeneity of disease, how people are different than one another, when you understand how medications work, you will be a better clinician. And on the other side, having the clinical knowledge when you go do your research is also extremely helpful. In my lab, for example, we have people that come from various backgrounds. They come, we are a dry lab, so we're doing computational work, analyzing genetic data. And many people come from bioinformatics, computer science. They don't have the clinical understanding. And having this clinical understanding, once they learn it with time, gives them much better ability to do their own research, to understand why they're doing the research, to understand what they're trying to solve, and what would be the best solutions. So I think this is backed up with with numbers, and also just from my own personal experience, I can say that people with clinician scientists, those that I know, are just extraordinary clinicians and scientists. In terms of ability to help more people, so if you think about your career as a clinician, imagine it's a 40 years career, and imagine that you work every single day of the year, 365 days a year for 40 years, and every day you see 10 new patients. This is a completely imaginary scenario. It will never happen because you're not going to work 365 days a year, and you're not going to see 10 new patients every day. Maybe you'll see 10 new patients every day if you work in the emergency department. If you're a surgeon who do quick surgeries, maybe. But even then, even if this completely imaginary scenario, you can help or touch 146,000 people in this imaginary career. Most clinicians, obviously, it's much less than that. It's thousands of patients, but it's much less than that. Now, I'm talking about Parkinson's disease because this is something that I'm personally studying. So if, for example, my efforts will pay off and we will find treatment for Parkinson's disease, which we currently do not have. We have treatments for the symptoms, but not a treatment that actually stops the disease or prevents it. Then I can have 10 million people worldwide who have Parkinson's disease. So for me, that was a very important point of view when I decided to go to this route, because I thought, okay, I really like the clinical work. It's fun. It's the connection with people and the patients and their families. It's very rewarding, but I really, for me personally, I wanted to be able to help more, even if I personally touch less patients with my hands. But eventually, if I can help more, for me, this is something that I really want to do. So this is something that you can do with research, and with pure clinical work. You can do less. Of course, I'm saying all of this, and I'm not underestimating the importance of clinical work, which is extremely important. But I want to emphasize what are the benefits of doing the MD-PhD. Now, another thing that was very attractive to me and attractive to many people is the diversity of roles that you can take on yourself. Roles in academia, like what I'm doing, in clinic, in the hospital. You can work in pharma, you can work in biotech, even not necessarily developing drugs, but developing different devices or things like that. You can have admin work, which is also something that a lot of us do. You can work in different foundations related to diseases, and you can combine many of those. Many people combine between them. So, for example, myself, I work in the academia, I work in the hospital at the neuro, and I work a lot with pharma. And another very nice thing is that you can always change it. You have a lot of room to change. You can always move from one to another, which is more difficult when you do an MD alone and you become a specialist in a very specific field. Moving to different things is a lot more a lot more difficult and challenging. And doing this MD-PhD already gave me, and as I said, I'm only in the middle of my career, already given me a lot of different roles that I'm doing, and I'm enjoying a lot. So for me, this was a major point of attraction for why I wanted to do the MD-PhD. I wanted to also bring the point of burnout. I assume many of you will register to med school, and hopefully many of you will go into med school. I want this to be in the back of your mind, to remember that burnout is a real thing, especially for doctors. It's one of the professions in which burnout and symptoms related to burnout are the most common. And I was quite worried about this, because I knew I would be prone for this, because I'm not a person that I could not imagine myself doing the same thing for 20, 30, 40 years. I knew I would have burnout, and having this route and be able to do all the different things I'm doing now and that I'm planning to do in the future, at least in my mind, for me personally, will most likely prevent me from having burnout. And I think it's another important thing to consider. In terms of key positions and funding, there are actually also, it's in some of the studies that I showed the titles before, and I'm sure you can find them on PubMed. Generally, clinician scientists have better chances to be appointed to key positions. Just for fun, I looked today at the chairs of the different departments in the Faculty of Medicine here at McGill. So, as you remember, I told you about 2 to 5% of all clinicians or clinician scientists. So out of the 16 chairs of departments, 8 that I know of are clinician scientists. Half. So that's just one example, but I'm seeing this a lot. You see a lot of people in key positions with MD-PhDs, because the ability to manage both clinical care and research nowadays is really, really important for hospitals, for universities, and the people who manage these institutions, they want people who have background in both. So having this background gives you these opportunities, or better chances to get these opportunities. Also, in terms of funding, there are studies that show that people with MD-PhDs, they get better funding than their equivalents with only MDs or only PhDs. This is also in one of the studies that I put above, shows this. In terms of collaborations and travel, this is one of the most fun things about being a clinician scientist. You get to collaborate with a lot of people. Of course, you can do your own research and just focus on that. But these days, I think COVID changed what most people think about how to do research. Back then, there were many people that were not sharing data before COVID and trying to do their own research. But things have changed a lot, and the understanding that we can find solutions fast if we collaborate and work together. COVID kind of pushed this a lot. And I work with a very large network of collaborators from all over the world, which allows me to interact with many different people from many different cultures, which is great. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking the 6 a.m. flight to a conference where I'll meet many of my friends. It gives me lots of interesting and diversified projects that I'm doing on top of my own research projects that we're doing in my lab. We get to participate in projects that others are doing. And just I put here as an example, in the last year alone, except for the different conferences that I'm going to, I was invited to give talks in South Korea, Turkey, and need to say Turkey these days, and Norway. And I traveled to, as you can see here, more than 50 countries and states in the last 8 years only. So this is really a kind of one of the fun parts of being MD-PhD with an independent research program. It gives you the time and the opportunity to be able to travel, to collaborate, to meet people, and it's really a lot of fun. I'm getting to this point last, but for me, it was the most important point, or the most important attraction for choosing this specific career that I chose is freedom. And what do I mean by freedom? I mean two things. One freedom is the freedom to do, to study, to learn, to work on the things that you want to work. As long as you get funding, you can do what you want to do. I don't have a boss that tells me you need to research this or that. I have my own research questions, my own interests. I apply with grants, I get funding, and we do the research. So this is one type of freedom that for me was very important, to do things that I'm interested in and I want to do and I'm curious about. And then the other freedom that is very important for me at least, and if I know for many other people, for quality of life, is the freedom to manage your time, the freedom to decide when you want to go somewhere, where you want to go. I have a boss, the director of my institute, but I never have to tell him when I go to, he doesn't know that I'm going to a conference tomorrow. He doesn't need to approve it. I don't need to ask for permission. It's a really free world that us clinician scientists who do mainly research like me live in. Of course, we have responsibilities, and I can't always travel, and I can't always go, but I can most of the time. And for me, that was a very, very important thing. The thought about, again, this is me personally, the thought about working, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, doing the same routine every day, for me was just an impossible thought. And now, as I told you, my every day looks different than the day before. And I completely control, or not completely, but I would say 90 to 95% of my time, I control it, and I decide what to do with it. So of course this can change. For example, if for example I will decide to only do clinical work at some point, or if I decide to, let's say, move to pharmaceutical companies, I get offers all the time to move to pharmaceutical companies, then of course this freedom will disappear. But that's what prevents me from taking this step, because this is the thing that, on top of the actual research that I do and the scientific interest that I have, is this freedom that gives me a lot of joy in my life. Okay, so the question is when to do your PhD. So of course you can do like what I did and what we're here to talk about today, to do an MD-PhD program. I think this is the preferred option, because an actual program that gives you support, like Dr. Ranzenberg presented, seminars, the buddy program, all kinds of things that will help you go through your PhD in a smoother way. Doing a PhD is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy. So being in a program really provides a lot of support to do that. But of course, there are people who are doing their PhDs, or some that are doing it before their MDs. They do the PhDs and then they decided they also want to become clinicians. And there's the possibility to do after your MD. You can do it either before or after your residency. I don't know, I can't tell you what is better if you'll ask me before or after, but all of these options are good. I think that all of them are good in the end, if in the end you become a clinician scientist. But again, for me, from my perspective, the best option by far is doing an MD-PhD program. Okay, so this is my last slide. And really you can do a lot of things as MD-PhD. I talked a little bit about myself and I gave myself as an example, but every single MD-PhD that you will talk to is doing something slightly different or completely different. You will see them, most of the MD-PhDs are in academic institutions, hospitals that are affiliated with academic institutions, or actually in universities, and combine research and clinical work, but they do it in a very different way. Each of them is doing it in a very different way. those of you who are more interested maybe in having a career in the pharmaceutical industry, which is a fascinating industry with completely different, the way it works is very different than academia and clinical work, but it's fascinating. So you can do that, and your ceiling is really the highest possible, because as I said, a lot of chief scientific officers, even CEOs of companies, most CEOs of companies, they come from financial background, but there are CEOs that are MD-PhDs as well. So there's really almost endless numbers of things that, and endless number of things that you can do with MD-PhD. And for me, I don't regret for not only I don't regret for a second that I took this path. I'm really extremely happy with my career. I still have a lot of years ahead of me, and I'm talking to my friends who went to med school with me and did not go to the MD-PhD program. I see the difference in happiness and in being pleased with what you do. They're all happy in the sense that they are doing something that is very important and they contribute, but it's not the same. So I'll end with this, and I don't know if we have time for questions or not. If we have time, I'm happy to take some questions. If we don't have time or we do it later, then we do it later. I put my email in the first slide in case anyone wants to contact me. I'm happy if you can share the slides with everyone after this talk. And if anyone wants to contact me, ask more questions, make comments, suggestions, feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.
That's great, Ziv. Thanks very much. That was a great overview, and your passion comes through. It's really terrific. So we don't have time for questions now, but we are going to have breakout sessions later in the plenary at the end. We'll be able to answer some questions. But I think, Yigu, we're going on to introduce some students at this point. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly. So we're going to do this very shortly and candidly. So the students will just like pop up and answer two highly existential questions. So Daniel, why don't you go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Mendelsohn. I'm a second year in the MD-PhD program. And I did my undergrad in honors psychology at McGill, and now I'm really loving my time. And why did I choose this program? Really what Ziv said. And I realized I did some traveling, and I realized that for me, a career doing meaningful work would be the most important thing in my life, to have a life that I enjoyed. And thinking about what meaningful things I could do, there wasn't much more meaningful that I could think of than doing research and being a clinician. Again, going back to the impacts that Ziv was talking about, where as a clinician, you're really helping individuals, which means the world to them. And doing research, you can really help on a different scale. And I love research. I'm happy to answer your questions in the breakout rooms, and hopefully I'll be seeing some of you guys in the coming years.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael. So I'm a year 5 MD-PhD student. So I'm an out-of-province student, so in case you have any questions, if you're applying out of province, then I could answer some questions about that. And one of the reasons why I chose McGill was because I felt that as a clinician scientist, you really have to be able to merge both the big data, the bioinformatics side, dealing with this new genomics technology. How does that meld with and blend with perhaps some of the more traditional wet lab science, bench science, your Western blots, your antibody stainings, your chip, all those things. So I felt that McGill was the place where I could really get that training. So I went to Dr. Petreca's lab, which really focuses on trying to learn some of these new technologies coming out, either in spatial technologies, next generation sequencing, single cell RNA sequencing. It really teaches the trainees how to get acquainted with these new technologies. And if you're a clinical scientist in the future, you're gonna have to know all these different aspects of it and be able to sort of merge it together in order to lead a team and bridge the gap between, let's say, scientists and clinicians. So that's why I chose McGill. Happy to answer more questions in the breakout rooms.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm a fourth year MD-PhD student and currently doing my PhD in the Inflammation Genomics lab supervised by David Langlais at the Baddeley Institute of Genomic Medicine. I wanted to pursue an MD-PhD because I wanted to sort of acquire the expertise to, similar to Michael, bridge the gap between basic science, computational analyses, and medicine. And so that's why I chose to study at McGill and also chose to join the Langlais lab. But it really wasn't until I joined the program that I realized the privilege I have now of being, in the same program as all these other incredibly kind, supportive, and brilliant students. And to me, that's one of the best parts of being the program, MD-PhD program at McGill.
Hi, everyone. My name is Owen. I am a sixth year student in the program. So I'm at the tail end of the PhD. I'll be finishing up by the end of December, and I'll be going back to med school in January for another 2.5 years. Why MD-PhD for me? Well, I'm interested in many things. So I don't really envision my future career to be the traditional MD career path. I enjoy wearing multiple hats. So that's probably why I would like to do the combined program. Why McGill? Well, McGill has a lot of great research, great cutting edge research, a lot of wonderful PIs. A lot of the labs are well funded. And with the PhD, I learned very versatile skills, transferable skills, as Dr. Eisenberg mentioned earlier, like managerial skills. I've mentored a great number of undergrads during my PhD, and those skills are transferable when I have to manage patients in the wards. And as Dr. Ganor said, doing a PhD, being involved in research, you get to have a lot of opportunities to go to conferences. So this past summer, I went to Italy to give an oral presentation, just by the Mediterranean Sea. And I also, took some time off just to enjoy Europe. So a lot of perks that come with the research part of the program. And I look forward to answering your questions in the breakout rooms.
So hi, everyone. You can all hear me, correct? It's good? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, so my name is Matt. I'm, as Owen mentioned, I'm also a sixth year student in the program, which means that I'm just kind of at the tail end of my PhD, finishing it up in the next couple of months. Prior to coming to the program, I had I did an undergraduate in psychology and chemistry at the University of Waterloo. And then after that, I worked for a year in medical insurance, kind of doing, different kind of service jobs there. And then did a master's before starting the program. My research background is very much in the basic sciences. And there are numerous reasons why, I guess the second question there is why I chose to do the MD-PhD combination degree. But I think at a very fundamental level, personally, I'm very interested in neurodegenerative diseases. And there's a real paucity of disease-modifying treatments for these types of disorders. So I'm doing the combination degree to kind of gain competencies in the basic and translational sciences so that hopefully when I go into the wards and see patients and start generating questions that I have about these disorders and how we might go about treating them, I have the tools and knowledge base in the sciences to be able to test them and provide answers to some of those questions. So that's kind of my main drive for doing the combination, but I'd be happy to answer any questions in the breakout rooms and meet some of you people. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole. So I am a third year MD-PhD student. So for me, I am doing my PhD in the computer science department. Why I am at McGill is really, I feel like I was really curious into diving more into the math and statistical backgrounds in terms of generative models. And so I really wanted to develop the models from the ground up and then understand them. And so I feel like this is going to be a very interesting thing to combine with medical knowledge in the future, which is why I'm at McGill with very good CS department. So yeah, happy to also answer more questions in the breakout room.
All right, thank you, everyone. So, well, if you go on the MD-PhD program website, we actually have a current students page where you will see kind of the bio of all of the students. So feel free to visit that. And now we can move on to the next section of tonight. And we will have Natalie speak about admissions.
So hello, everybody. I'm just gonna share my screen. 1 second. Does everybody see the screen? No, 1 second.
No,
Just gonna
I'm
just
not.
share. Okay, 1 second. Here we go. Now we
It's
see.
good. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
okay. Somehow it's okay. So let me just go back to the other one here. All right. So welcome again, everybody, and I'm gonna provide you with some information about the MD, about how to apply for the MD-PhD program. So you've learned a lot about what the program offers once you're in, but now you need to learn a little bit about how to get admitted to the MD-PhD program. So I'm Natalie Allen from the Undergraduate Medical Admissions Office. So for the selection process, how it works is basically 70% at the beginning is academic, okay? So that's basically your GPA. 20% Casper is the Casper test that you need to take. The latest date, I'll let you know in a bit, is mid-October. And 10% are the interviews. So once you're considered competitive at those 3 levels, then you're invited to the interviews, and the final decision is going to be 100% based on the interviews. So, you know, we're looking for well-rounded individuals that, yes, you're strong academically, you're going to be able to follow the curriculum, do well, do your research, etc. But at the same time, we're also looking for candidates who also have a passion about human beings and want to help others and have those other types of non-academic qualities we're looking for. So we're looking for well-rounded individuals. So for the bachelor's degree, it can be in any field. So, you know, yes, it can be science-based, but it doesn't necessarily need to be science-based. You know, we have students admitted with maybe engineering degrees, with even arts, different areas of arts. It could be also, sometimes we have some students admitted with nursing degrees, law, it could be any types of degrees. And we will be using your bachelor's degree. So some candidates apply with like a master's degree, but it's not going to be the master's degree that's going to be considered for the academic evaluation. It's really the bachelor's degree that counts for the 70%. There is a little bit of a boost, like a little 10% extra for those who have a degree that leads to a professional order. For example, who, you know, have studied law. Basically, once you graduate, you can then practice in that field, or nursing, for example, or engineering. Otherwise, it's, you know, basically it's your bachelor's degree, and it counts for 70% if it's not in a degree in a field that leads to a profession where you can practice after. So for those of you who did your DEC in Quebec, then we're looking for a 90-degree credit. And then for those of you who did not do a DEC in Quebec, then it's 120 credits. And so we're looking for full-time studies in general, like 12 to 15 credits per semester, but we do allow for an additional year. Also, we understand some people have to work sometimes. Not everybody can afford full-time studies. So in the last few years, we've expanded and modified some of our admission criteria to be a little bit more open to candidates from this year. We're focusing also on candidates from low socioeconomic backgrounds, for example. So we have a bunch of different pathways also, which I'm not going to get into too much this evening, but pathways for underrepresented groups in medicine. So just quickly, like, for example, the Indigenous candidates, Black candidates, and low socioeconomic backgrounds, and rural and small populations. We also have sometimes candidates, we have a lot of reapplicants, like about almost 60-something% of our applicants are reapplicants. So a lot of, because we only have a small number of positions for a large number of applicants. So people are constantly working on improving their application. So one of the ways of doing that, for example, if their GPA wasn't very high the first time around with their first bachelor's degree, sometimes they do a second bachelor's degree. The second bachelor's degree can be taken part-time. So we're looking for 45 credits by the application deadline, and the remaining 15 credits will be completed in the winter semester. And then we will use whichever bachelor's degree has the higher GPA for the basis of admission degree. So the winter 2020 grades are not used because that was during the pandemic. And as I mentioned, like the small boost for professional degrees, if you have a master's PhD, for example, or if you've taken the majority of your courses at the 400 level. We also have what's called extenuating circumstances, because we understand, you know, during your studies in life, things do happen. Some people have had, you know, accidents, illnesses, etc., or have had to take care of a relative, for example, who might have been ill during a period of time. So if that, you know, that situation applies to you, we have what is called extenuating circumstances, where you write a letter stating what happened during this defined period of time and supporting documentation, and then you can submit that by the application deadline. So in general, we're not looking like somebody whose circumstances affected the whole length of their degree, then that's generally not going to be, we'd advise you to more focus on getting a second bachelor's degree, for example. But if it's affected part of your degree, then we do, you know, welcome you to submit extenuating circumstances, because we need to see that during the majority of your studies, you were able to perform well. So if, you know, everything is affected from A to Z, then we will not be able to determine that you will be able to successfully do well in the MD-CM program. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, you can do a bachelor's degree in any field. So, you know, we've got people, as I mentioned, it could be in history, it can be in archaeology, different fields, but everybody is required to have basic sciences, okay? So the basic science courses we're looking for are 2 introductory biology with labs, 2 introductory chemistry with labs, 2 introductory physics with labs, and 1 organic chemistry with labs. So we do accept substitutions. We've got the list of those on our website also. And generally, sometimes like people have higher level courses at times. So you can submit like a request for substitution up until September 30th. And you can also have up to 3 courses, 3 basic science courses that are not yet completed, that you will complete by May 31st of when you're should you be accepted. So we're looking for a minimum grade of a C for the university level courses, and for CEGEP level courses, a 60% or higher. So if you took the basic science courses during the winter 2020 semester, we do accept pass, fail, and satisfactory just for that specific semester, but not for any other semester. And the good news is, since last year, the MCAT is no longer required for the admission cycle. So since 2023, French language proficiency is a requirement for all candidates applying to the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, also for some of our other professional programs like nursing, etc., because you will be placed in the hospital setting, you know, starting after transition to clinical practice and in the last 2 years. So it's very important that you are able to communicate with patients and families in either English or French, because we are in Quebec, et il y a une grande partie de la population qui parle le français, donc c'est important d'être capable de comprendre et communiquer avec les patients dans les 2 langues. So we're looking for a B2, which is sort of like a mid-intermediary level for Montreal campus. That's what we're looking for that. So we're not looking for any advanced grammar in French, but basically to be able to understand everyday conversations, to be able to write, but not, it doesn't have to be as I mentioned, grammatically correct 100%, but to be able to converse, to be able to listen to maybe television shows in French or a radio broadcast, to understand. So it's a B2 level. You can go to this www.ncl-ael.ca for a free self-assessment to sort of see where you are. Okay. So for anybody who did high school and cégep in Quebec, whether it's in English or in French, you're exempt from having to submit proof of French language proficiency. Or if you do your Casper test in French, then you're exempt because it shows that you demonstrate that you can understand the language, etc. So we also do recommend the continuing studies French language proficiency test at McGill, which is more of a low-cost option if that's possible also for you. Or else there's also these other tests that we have on our website that you can look at. And in general, for some of the tests, it's only if you're going to be invited to interview, then we're going to ask you, like if you passed the first assessment, we're going to ask you to do the oral test. Sorry, we're going to ask you to do the oral exam sort of a little bit afterwards, just like in January, and then to submit the results for that. Or if you took the continuing studies oral exam last year, then it's still valid for this year, but not the written test. The written test has to be written every year. So I've spoken a little bit about the academic. So also just to go back about the academic, we're looking for for a Quebec resident, a 3.5 or above, but in general, those invited to interview was about a 3.8. Just so you know. And for the non-academic evaluation, well, that's looked at through the Casper test. So you go to that website and to take the test in English or in French. We're looking for these non-academic qualities, so compassion, empathy, care, listening to patients, etc. Autonomy, leadership initiative, respect of others, community involvement, creativity, it's curiosity. So these are all non-academic qualities we're looking for. We're not looking for one specific type of profile of applicants. Some people think they absolutely have to have done volunteer work in a hospital in order to be accepted. That's not true. I mean, if you do, that's fine, but any type of we're looking for sort of long-term commitments, things that you're interested in, passionate about. We want well-rounded individuals. So some people are almost professional pianists. Some people are, part of a soccer team, for example. They're a coach. Some people can be tutoring. And we understand some people also have to take care of family members that are sick or have to work a second job to help support their family. So the evaluators that are reviewing your CV, there's 2 separate evaluators for each application. They are aware that not everybody can have access to the same types of opportunities, and that if these qualities shine, through your CV, and we're looking, as I mentioned, the long-term commitments, that's what we're looking for. So we also do encourage you to go to the Acuity Insights website and to do the practice tests, also just to get familiar also with the Casper. And for CV, it's very important that you use the template that's on our website. So don't take time trying to get this fancy CV. We're looking for the 2-page template that is on our website. Really focus on the qualities you want the admissions committee and the professionals to look at, and that really speak about who you are. If you're a McGill student, you can always go to the CAPS office and they can also assist you. Otherwise, as I mentioned, it's also always good to sort of, really review your CV a few times and make sure maybe have somebody else, another pair of eyes look at it and say, are these really the, the points that are I should be highlighting or focusing on, etc. And so for the final selection is the mini multiple interview. So they will be held virtually again this year. And I will, there's 7 different stations, and it's, one evaluator for each station. We put all those different grades together at the end, and then that's the final decision. And for the mini multiple interviews, we're looking at these non-academic qualities also. Okay, so they could be situational based, they could be discussion based. So there's different types of scenarios. It's not a sit down traditional interview where you're speaking about your CV and your skills specifically. So what are the key dates and the application deadline? So the online application opens on September 3rd. You apply for the MDCM program and select also MDCM PhD if you're interested. You must include the list of publications, summary of your research experience and interest, and 2 reference letters. And all of the supporting documents must be submitted by November 1st, including if you do have extenuating circumstances, including that. The date for the interview is January 28th. And as Dr. Eisenberg mentioned, you're going to have the interview, the MMI interviews, as I mentioned, the 7 different stations. And then in the afternoon, you're going to be interviewed by the MD-PhD program. The interview dates are February 18th to 21st. And the date of offers is March 31st. And you begin the program with the orientation in August, mid to late August. And August of the following year is when you apply to the PhD portion of your program of your choosing. So what you need to do, as I mentioned, online application, Casper test last dates in English and French is October 16th. You complete your online application, 2 letters of reference, research appendix. So they must contain the publications and scholarly activities, as well as a 1-page narrative describing your research experience to date, career goals, and your subject of interest. CV, academic history workbook, where you list all of your the courses pertaining to your bachelor's degree. And we recommend that you look at the admissions website for the template and the guide. Proof of citizenship for your, whether you're a Quebec resident, a Canadian outside of Quebec, an international student, you must submit proof of citizenship, proof of French language proficiency, transcripts, unofficial and scanned, and then you can keep track of your application through the application portal. So you can also meet us at our office. We have two days a week, so Tuesday AM and Thursday PM during specific hours. You could also email us, and we can also set up virtual meetings with you if you're interested. So for example, Jay, that may be here, I'm not sure, he's one of the MD-PhD program student ambassadors. He's one of our student ambassadors too. And then for example, Seppi, we also have a bunch of different student ambassadors too, like we have the student ambassadors specific to the MD-PhD program, and we have the regular other student ambassadors. So, if you're interested, you read their profile and you say, this is somebody I'm interested in learning about their, their journey. It kind of resonates with what I'm interested in. Feel free to reach out to us. And we also have our MDCM PhD FAQ page also. So that's that. And,
great, Natalie. That was a terrific overview, and always probably the part of the evening that people pay the closest attention to, if I'm not mistaken. Hugo, I think we're turning over to Amy Ryan now. Is that right?
Exactly. Before the breakout room question sessions and the plenary Q&A.
Okay, Amy, go to it.
Okay, so I guess welcome. For those of you who have endured to this point, congratulations. You're getting a lot of information tonight, and I just want to spend a few minutes to just briefly go over the PhD part of the MD-PhD and what you need to do to plan for that. So first of all, I just want to share that within the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, we totally...
Amy, we see the presenter mode.
You see the presenter mode.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's
Swap
not
display.
presentation.
Is that better?
Yeah,
okay,
that's better. Good.
So as part of our philosophy within the faculty, particularly for people in the MD-PhD program, but really for all of our graduate students, we really want everybody to end up in supportive training environments that are going to allow you to achieve your potential and prepare you for your future career. And this choice of labs and where you end up is really important to consider when you're choosing for the PhD component of your MD-PhD. And we really view our students, you start off as students or trainees, but you're exiting these labs as junior colleagues. You have as much expertise often in your subject area at the end as the supervisor supervising you, because you have really gone deep into a particular topic area. And as part of that, you will get training for both the what we would consider hard skills, so the research skills, as well as all of the other soft skills that surround that. So when we talked about, okay, now, sorry, I've got my images. Okay. So when we talked about the MD-PhD, we talked about this sort of 7 or 8 year plan. And, there's the blocks of the MD-CM program. And then what I've shown in blue are these blocks of your PhD program. But in actual fact, work towards your PhD begins before this. It actually works early on. And I would say, I would even suggest that it starts now, thinking about your PhD. Just like you're going to be choosing McGill as a place you might want to come and do your MD-PhD, for the medical school experience, for all of the experiences that our students have shared with you that they're having while they're here, you too want to start thinking about, is there also somebody where I'm going to be really excited about doing a PhD with? This is a super important component, and we would encourage you to start looking now, and I'm going to give you a few tips on that. But when you start, you might have a little bit of a break in the fall term, but by winter term, we're already suggesting, okay, find somebody, because that summer between your first and second years, we hope that you're going to be in one of our research labs, trying out a lab, saying, is this where I'm going to fit with my PhD? Can I get going on the techniques? Can I learn about this project? So that when you do your application to the PhD program, as you hit fall of your second year, you know exactly where you're going to go. You've already made connections in that lab, and you're finding time to be there, maybe joining their lab meetings if it doesn't conflict with classes. And then you've got this very intense 3 to 4 years where you're in the lab, really focused on what needs to happen for that PhD, the data you need to generate. And many students, you heard some of them who are sort of transitioning back into the MD-CM program this winter in January 2025. Some of them will be done already, and others will be just sort of in the phase of writing. And so your PhD can sort of drift into those sort of return years when you've gone back to the MD-CM program. When you're thinking about, as I said, now it's not too early to start thinking about where you want to go. You don't need to have final confirmation. You don't need to have a supervisor assigned when you start, but do be thinking about it. You're going to be asked that at the interview as part of, where do you see yourself going? What type of research are you thinking about? And I would also advise you that although we've got many other academic institutions in Montreal, your supervisor must be from McGill. You're in a McGill MD-PhD program, and this has caused a little bit of conflict for some students when they thought they might partner between institutions, but your primary supervisor has to be at McGill. So really start thinking about, if you're here tonight, so that must mean you're curious about doing research. You might have areas that you've already have some experience in, things you want to continue with. Talk to your current research advisors. Think about the types of techniques you want to do, and then start to look at what you might do when you're at McGill. I would just also direct you, as you're thinking about that, to our graduate and postdoctoral studies site at McGill. There's a prospective students, and although a lot of the information there is going to pertain to students who are just in graduate programs, if you go to that link and you follow it through, there is a search tool so that you can search an area by keywords, and that can bring up graduate programs, and within the graduate program, you can find specific supervisors that might interest you. This is, I think, even more important for those of you who aren't already at McGill. People who are at McGill may already have experience and know where they want to go. But if you're coming from another university, our whole cast of researchers are going to be new to you. And so this is one way to sort of delve into that. And as well, if you have any other questions, you can come to our website, which I haven't listed here, but it's the graduate and postdoctoral study site within the faculty. You can also email me. My email is amy.ryan@mcgill.ca, and I can give you advice on where to go and look. I guess I should have introduced myself. I'm the Associate Dean for Grad and Postdoctoral Studies. And so my role is to help facilitate some of these things and put you in touch with who is the best person for you to talk to. I would just say, as you're thinking about choosing a supervisor, I always tell all future students, you're going to have amazing opportunities, regardless of the type of research you want to do, to be at the forefront of cutting edge projects. You're going to be making sort of the next discoveries that are going to impact maybe the next very basic finding or a clinical research finding that might really impact patient care more immediately. So you have to think about your project, though, as if it's doable in the context of an MD-PhD. You have to think about sort of what are your values. And I mean that in terms of what type of training environment you want to participate in, how you like to be supervised. And I can tell you, as a MD-PhD student, we hope you're going to have a lot of eyes on you, helping you stay on track and not get distracted by a lot of side projects, because our goal is for you to finish without too much stress in this very tight timeline. But you need to talk to students, you need to talk to other MD-PhD students, but you should also talk to other graduate students that are in the lab to find out, will this be a match for you? Will this match your personality? Will it match the different challenges that are there? Will you be able to have the opportunities you're looking for? So that's super important. And with that, I'm going to leave it. If there's any other questions, I'll be popping in and out of the breakout rooms as well. Thank you.
Great, Amy. That was terrific. Really appreciate it. So Yigo, how are we going to do these breakout rooms? How does it work?
All right, so for the breakout rooms, they are being launched as we speak, and students will get assigned to a breakout room with a pair of MD-PhD students and ask specific questions or questions that you don't want other people to hear. So
And the faculty members get to be in the
yeah,
breakout
you're
rooms?
going to be able to move yourself around.
Good.
So Yang, do you want to launch the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I'm going to open all the rooms. And I think in Natalie and Dr. Ganor, Dr. Eisenberg, and Dr. Ryan, you can rotate among those rooms as you will.
Very good.
Okay, now all the rooms are open and we need to assign student. Yigu, do you want to take in charge, like assign the students, or do you want me to help you with that?
I actually can't. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
you can't?
I'll assign. Yeah.
Are people being automatically pushed to breakout rooms, or do they have to accept to go?
I'm throwing them in breakout rooms.
Okay.
I'm manually directing the participants to breakout rooms, but you have the
No,
you
I
have the-
understand. I was just wondering how they were,
okay.
if they had to accept, if you're doing them one by one.
Okay. And the student volunteers, MD, PhD student volunteers, you can direct yourself to the room, eh? You're all co-hosts of this event. So you can join the room. You can move in and out freely from the room.
Yang, do you see there are people like coming back to the main session?
I see people are still unassigned. So
Yep.
I think we can assign some of the people to Aiden and Anika's room.
Yeah, sure. So I would say.
Okay, I'm gonna move to my room with Sarah.
Yeah, you go. Okay, I'm
Okay.
going to assign the rest of the people. Okay, you go.
Okay.
Of questions. Maybe the best way to take questions would be if people can send them by the chat, right? Or a Q&A. Does that make sense? Or maybe there are no questions anymore or comments.
If there are no questions, people are free to leave, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I see Honoa has a question.
It's a question for Professor Ryan. For admission wise, I spoke to one of the undergraduate recruitment officers, I think a couple days ago, and I asked about grade progression, as in throughout the years, if your grade improves, if that's considered. And she told me no. Is that correct?
That would be a question for Natalie.
Yeah, so we're really looking at your overall GPA.
Okay.
The overall GPA that we're looking at, yeah. The only thing is, for example, if something specific, as I mentioned, for extenuating circumstances happen in a specific semester and your grades were affected, then you would write a letter to say this particular thing happened and, with the supporting documents. But otherwise, it's really your overall GPA for all of the.
Okay. So for I'm an out-of-province student doing my bachelor's at McGill right now. So you guys would consider the U0 year as well, right?
Yeah, all the years.
Okay, thank you.
I actually see a couple of questions in the chat here. So first question is, how important are the letters of reference for the MD-PhD applications considered wise for a PhD? So, I don't know the answer to that. We asked for 2 letters of reference, but I think that McGill has gotten rid of all letters of reference. We still take them for the MD-PhD program, but mostly we want to know, we're trying to judge how much research experience you had and how committed you are to research. But, reference letters are notoriously unreliable because everybody says, you know, you're the best student they've had in the past 10 years. So, I mean, we take them under consideration, but it's part of the entire package. So we're looking at your GPA, we're looking at your CV, we're looking at your publications, we're looking at how much time you spent in the lab over the years. And as I say, at least 2 members of the program advisory committee are looking at each application. So it's part of the whole package, but you know, I can't put a number on it. I see your hand is up, but let me just answer this other question. You mentioned lectures at Thompson House on Thursdays. Am I allowed to go to those before I enter the program? Also, when are they? So the meetings at Thompson House are on Thursday evenings from 6 to 7:30. They often go till 8. It's every 2 to 3 weeks during the semesters. But we can't take people from outside the program right now because the program's gotten bigger, and so we're sort of maxed out for our room size, and it sort of wouldn't be fair if some people were there and others were not. So currently we are not allowing people who are not yet in the program to join. That may be different if you're in the med school and you take a leave of absence and you're doing a PhD potentially. But before you're in the program, we can't do that. Okay. Yeah, your hand went down, I guess. Anoa. So, right, no more questions?
I think it automatically did that. But for the basic sciences, this is like another admission requirement question. I don't have 2 intro bio classes. I took like bio 112, but not 111. But I did take pathophysiology. I took 2 pathophysiology classes. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, and it's really the biology courses we need. So 2 introductory biology courses. We have on our website. I can try to put the link quickly to see the equivalent courses that we require. If not, if you don't have them, then you can have up to 3 science courses that are in progress and submitted by May 31st. So just to let you. Okay. So I'll just put the link to where you can find the information for the courses here. Oops.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I think there was somebody that had a question about if you're not admitted to MD-PhD, will you be considered for the MDCM? Yes. So you're being considered as one application for both. So, you know, if you don't, for example, as Dr. Eisenberg mentioned, we only have 5 spots for the MD-PhD program. If you're not unfortunately selected, then you would be considered for sure for MDCM. And if selected, offered a position.
Yeah. There's another question there in the chat. It says, hi, I'm really interested in teaching in medicine. How would integrating aspects of teaching differ between MD-PhD versus MD only? Thanks. So, you know, I think we're talking about clinician scientists tonight, but there's also clinician educators in academic medicine. And so there's people that are very interested in teaching medical students, residents, fellows. And they typically have like a master's degree in education, I would say. So they're usually clinicians that do a master's degree in education. They typically don't have a PhD. So we haven't done that before. I guess it could be considered, but it would be a lot to do a PhD. And maybe if you're going to do research in education, that could potentially be a case, right? I see Amy shaking her head, yes. But you know, the clinician educators we typically see are people with master's degree in education.
Right. And I would just add that the people that come in, like we do have a PhD program in the Institute of Health Sciences Education. A lot of those people that come in though and do PhDs there have significant teaching experience already before they're starting PhDs. Not all, I think, but some. So it would be, you'd have to reach out to them and ask about their profile of the type of PhD students that they accept.
Well, I have to say that, you know, pretty much all MD PhDs do a lot of teaching. They maybe not have formal training in teaching, but we all do a lot of teaching. Ziv, I say, yeah, it looks like there's a question for you in the chat. I don't know if you can see that. Postdocs, about postdocs. You see that?
One second. Thank you. some of the PhDs going to the postdocs would be really interested in hearing what some people consider when deciding to pursue one or not. So from my perspective, I mean, generally speaking, if you want a faculty position in a university, it is better to do a postdoc. It also improves your research skills by a lot, because what happens in a PhD, usually you really understand what's going on at the end of it. Like year 3 or 4, you can ask the PhD students here, they will attest to that you really know what you're doing at year 3 or 4. And when you do a postdoc, it gives you additional few years of more heavy research experience. For me, it was extremely useful. So I do recommend it if you're really interested in having faculty position and running a lab at some point.
Okay. There's another question right after that. Maybe I'll read it. It says, thank you for the presentation. In terms of the day of the life of a clinician scientist, do you have the freedom of choosing how much time to spend on clinical work versus research work? Is your time divided relatively equally, or is it up to you? So the answer is it's up to you. So I'm sort of a 60-60 person. I'm a interventional cardiologist and a clinical epidemiologist. I think Ziv, you have a much higher percentage of research compared to clinical than I do. So some people are 80-20 or 90-10. But we would typically expect you to do 50% or more of your time in research. If you're going to do if you're only thinking about doing maybe 20% of your time in research, I'm not sure the MD-PhD program is the way to go, I would say. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Ziv?
No, yeah, it's really up to you, your contract with the institution and what you decide to do. I think here where I work at the Neuro, most clinician scientists, they start at 50-50 and slowly they're shifting towards doing more research and less clinical work. Most of the more veteran ones, they're doing 1 day a week of clinical work or even half a day, and the rest they do research.
I would say, it can change over the course of your career, as you get more senior scientists, you have more administrative roles. So, it's nice, as you, pointed out in your presentation. There's a question about funding. So you only get a stipend during the PhD portion of the MD-PhD program. So you're on your own for the 4 years of medical school. But there are, and maybe Amy, you could speak to that about the support during the PhD years.
Right, we have a standard level of funding for across. It doesn't matter what graduate program you pick within the faculty. It's the same level of funding that covers a living stipend that is steadily increasing every year, as well as your tuition and fees. So regardless, if you have, everybody at PhD within Canada has Canadian. If you are international, it would cover the international tuition for the fees. But I think that the number of international spots there are, Natalie can correct this, is low, our availability of international spots, but you are able to live. We are improving our stipends and you are able to live. And I think, as was pointed out in the presentation, our MD-PhD cohort has been really successful at getting external funding awards too, which help and bring in above the standards for the minimum standards.
Yes. So we only have 2 international positions for everything. So yeah.
Okay, I think that brings us to 8 o'clock, and I don't see any more questions. So I think we'll bring this to a close, but I want to thank everybody who participated, starting with Yigu and Yang for organizing, and for Ziv for giving our keynote, and Amy and Natalie for presenting, and all of our students and our student volunteers. I don't know if I missed anybody, but I really, we've been doing this open house for years now, and I think it's really nice. But I get a lot of emails, people asking questions about the program, and I say, go to the YouTube website and you'll have all your questions answered. But it's it's nice, it's really nice to do it live, and we have a great turnout every year. So really well done, and kudos to everybody. So thanks very much. Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.